Have you ever wondered why some nations are rich while others are poor? This question is the heart of the book, Why Nations Fail, penned by economists Darren Acemoglu and James A. Robinson. This work embarks on a journey to debunk traditional theories that credit economic disparities to factors such as geography, culture, or ignorance. Take Nogales, a city divided by the US-Mexico border, as an example. Despite its geographical proximity and shared cultural background, the economic disparity between the two sides is striking. This disparity cannot be attributed to differences in geography, culture, or knowledge. Instead, it points to the existence of deeper, more complex forces at play. The authors suggest that these conventional theories, although widely accepted, are fundamentally flawed and oversimplify the complex issue of global economic inequality. So, if geography, culture, and ignorance are not the culprits, what are the real determinants of a nation's prosperity? Acemoglu and Robinson argue that the secret lies in a country's institutions. They classify these institutions as either extractive or inclusive. Extractive institutions, like a greedy octopus, clutch power and wealth in their tentacles, leading to a chasm of poverty. They create an economic environment where the few thrive at the expense of the many. Conversely, inclusive institutions, much like a nurturing tree, foster growth, encouraging widespread participation. They create an environment that empowers each individual, allowing innovation and progress to flourish. This dichotomy between extractive and inclusive institutions forms the backbone of their argument. It's not about geography, culture, or ignorance. It's about the structures in place that either harness the collective potential of a nation or squander it. But how do these institutions evolve? And what role do historical events play in shaping them? Enter the concept of critical junctures and institutional drift. These are pivotal moments in history that shape a nation's institutions. They are turning points that can lead a society down one of two paths. The first is institutional drift, where similar societies diverge due to different choices made at critical junctures. Like two ships sailing in the same direction, a sudden gust of wind, a critical juncture, can set them on completely different courses. The second path is transformative shifts towards inclusivity. These are shifts that fundamentally alter the power and economic structures of a society, paving the way for prosperity. Take Europe, for instance. The Black Death, a catastrophic event, was a critical juncture that led to significant institutional changes. In the aftermath, labor scarcity tipped power scales, leading to shifts towards more inclusive institutions, particularly in Western Europe. And what happens when a country embraces inclusivity? Well, the answer to that question is truly fascinating. Inclusive institutions lead to economic prosperity. Let's delve into the crux of this assertion. Historically, nations with inclusive institutions have always reaped long-term benefits. A prime example of this is the aftermath of the Black Death in England. This cataclysmic event, which wiped out nearly half of the population, ironically set the stage for the development of inclusive institutions. Amidst the chaos, the drastic reduction in labor supply led to a power shift. The laborers' enhanced bargaining power resulted in better wages and living conditions, thus fostering inclusivity. This shift, in turn, spurred economic growth. The Black Death, a devastating plague, thus paved the way for an era of prosperity in England. It's fascinating, isn't it, how inclusivity in politics can foster an inclusive economy, creating a perpetual cycle of prosperity. But what about the flip side? What happens under extractive institutions? Extractive institutions form a vicious cycle of poverty. These are the systems that concentrate power and wealth among a select few, leaving the majority in a state of perpetual underdevelopment. They are like a straitjacket, stifling economic participation and innovation. As resources are exploited for the benefit of the elite, the vast majority are trapped in a cycle of impoverishment and struggle. Let's consider the case of Sierra Leone, a nation rich in diamonds yet ensnared in poverty. Here, extractive institutions have allowed a small elite to reap the rewards of the country's diamond industry, while the majority of the population languishes in destitution. This stark contrast is the devastating hallmark of extractive practices. These structures, by design, resist change and maintain the status quo, perpetuating the cycle of poverty. They create a poverty trap from which escape is exceedingly difficult. So, are nations doomed to their fate, or can they break free from these chains? Critical junctures can act as catalysts for change. They're these decisive moments in a nation's history that present it with a crossroads. Each path leads to a different destiny. One path may lead to breaking free from extractive institutions, those structures that concentrate power and wealth in the hands of a few. The other path might just reinforce these institutions, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and inequality. For instance, let's dive into the Glorious Revolution in England. It was a critical juncture that led to the strengthening of inclusive institutions, fostering a culture of shared economic success. On the other hand, we have Botswana and Sierra Leone, two nations rich in resources, yet their paths diverged dramatically due to the choices made at critical junctures. In the end, the fate of nations lies in their own hands. The choices they make at critical junctures can either foster a future of shared economic success or perpetuate a cycle of poverty.